Welcome to the Reprofiles, where infertility meets injustice and nothing is off limits.
We're two nurses. We're certified reproductive health advocates, and we're here to tell you everything they didn't.
From the broken systems to the heartbreak left behind, we're here to connect the facts, the policies, and the pain.
Because silence isn't safety, and we're done being quiet.
This is the Reprofiles.
Infertility, injustice, and all things nobody warned you about. Hi, and welcome back to the Repro Files. Today we have Julie back with us, Dr. Bindeman. We're going to be talking to her about a lot of different subjects today. We have a lot of things to talk about today. And also my co-host is here today.
Hello, Elizabeth Lee here, your co-host of the Reprofiles, Infertility, Injustice, and all things no one told you about. We are very excited to have back Dr. Bindeman with us. For those of you who don't know or didn't listen to the last episode, Dr. Bindeman is a wildly talented fertility psychologist who helps patients navigate pretty much one of the hardest journeys of their life. So welcome back, Julie.
Thank you so much. Love that I'm here.
And even though I'm in Arizona, Julie is in Maryland and Anne-Marie is in Florida, I was lucky enough to get to see Julie about a month ago now. So
Yeah.
Julie came to a big fundraiser we were having for our campaign. For those of you who are listening who don't know, I'm also a congressional candidate who is now officially so after filing over 2,000 signatures last Wednesday to get on the ballot.
Yay!
Super fun because it was my birthday, so it was a fun way to, that's kind of like a unique way to
Perfect.
celebrate one's birthday. But in any case, I digress. As you mentioned, Anne-Marie, we're going to talk about kind of what's in the news because I'm aghast.
Mm-hmm.
Is-
Mm-hmm.
You lead this discussion for us so we can talk through and really call attention to what is actually going on right now. Because I was so overwhelmed by a headline in the last week that I was just like, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what I was reading. So lead us down the
Well, we'll start with my home state, right? We'll
smart.
start with the state of Florida. So there is a story.
Mm-hmm.
There was a woman. She was in labor. She is a doula herself. She was in the hospital, and all of a sudden, they whooshed in like a screen of some sort. I don't know whether it was an iPad or what have you, but she was actually in court while she was in her hospital bed, hooked up to IVs and such like that. And basically, the hospital was trying to get a judge so that they could do a C-section on her because she had not
To
consented.
compel a C-section. I just want to use some strong there
That's-
because this would be compelling
And
Yeah.
a C-section on someone who had not consented.
Right. And let me add some context here, if you guys don't mind, about this particular case, because Charisse Doyley is her name. Charisse is a doula, and she has several kids at home. I want to say maybe 3 children at home, and was very concerned about the implications that a C-section would have on her ability to A, recover, B, care for her newborn, and C, care for her existing children. She knew the risk, especially as a doula who had been exposed to the labor and delivery environment a lot of times. She would have been, in my estimation, more informed than the average patient. Now, I used to work in labor and delivery, and patients who want to have a vaginal birth after a prior C-section do have to consent, and Charisse had prior C-sections. The point is that she was more than willing to sign a waiver. And in my history of in labor and delivery, the patient is always given the risks and allowed to make a choice. So for this to happen to somebody like Charisse is really alarming, much in the way that some of the very rare but traumatic things that have happened to me medically have sort of been like that. It's hard to believe that this could happen to a doula.
Yeah. And like you said, Elizabeth, she has had prior C-sections. She knew the risks, and she had troubles in previous C-sections recovering. She was actually sent back to the hospital for hemorrhaging. So it wasn't just like I don't want to have a C-section. She knew the risks. She knew what her body was going to do. So she was fully informed and had every right to make that decision.
Now, Julie, from a psychological perspective, will you talk to us about a couple of things, if you don't mind? One being the psychological state of a patient in labor. just in
Mhm.
general. And then juxtapose that against what it must have been like for her coming into the hospital, knowing she wanted to do a VBAC and then being forced to. Like, talk to us about like the mental health and psychological implications of that because it just blows my mind.
Yeah. So on TV, labor and delivery is portrayed in a very different way than how most people experience it. It is not quick like you see on TV. It is not.
Glamorous.
No, it's not glamorous at all. And, you don't have people that are necessarily happy there. And it's like, yay! You have very exhausted birthing people there because birth tends not to be fast. It can be, of course, but particularly like for someone who's this is their first delivery, it typically won't be very fast. Now, for her, it was not her first delivery. So hers might have been faster, but I don't know the correlation between VBACs and faster births. I'm not sure that there is the same kind as there is for vaginal birth to vaginal birth. But when people go into labor, they're really vulnerable and they put themselves in a situation where they have to be really trusting. And hopefully there's another person there who can help advocate for them. Doulas, I think, are wonderful because we have scientific proof that they help lower the C-section rate. And I think it's really important too to just remind people that a C-section is an emergency surgical procedure. We kind of take it as, oh, it becomes an option to give birth. And it's an emergency surgical procedure, and there's always risks when we're talking about surgery. So, very different risks than if we're talking about vaginal delivery. Generally speaking, people are excited, they're a little scared, they have to be really trusting, and they're vulnerable because they don't know what's going to happen next. And as exciting as it might be, it also is kind of scary. Feeling that pain if you've never felt contractions before. It's something. It's I can't even compare it to anything because I don't know any other experience in my life or in existence that could compare. But yeah, I mean, it just felt like my insides were trying to all come out at the same time. And we're having a fight about how do we get out of here. So it
You mentioned
also,
was
yeah,
lowering the rate of C-section. I wonder if that has to do with the ability for the patient to feel more safe and calm, right? Because the uterus is a big old muscle, and so if your body is fighting against it, that
it's
can lead to that C-section. So one could argue that we should have a doula always because just like think about this, in like a med surge floor in a hospital, which is like your basic floor, you have appendicitis, you go into that floor. That floor is going to have different resources that are set up for you that are not a nurse or a doctor. So like there's a tech that if you need your blood sugar checked or you need to be helped up to the bathroom or something like there's additional hands on deck. To my recollection, there were not techs in L&D. I don't believe that we had any techs, meaning that a doula is an amazing source of a doula is not a nurse, but a good doula has the ability to communicate and to educate and to nurture in the same way a nurse does. So why wouldn't you want to have that doula in the room? I don't get that.
And in fact, Anne Marie and I for our capstone project actually were we're lobbying for and trying to support a federal law that would enable doulas to be covered by Medicaid, which is awesome because it means that people then can have a greater sense of access. Particularly, these are people that are in populations that we know correlate with high maternal morbidity and mortality. So having a doula there, knowing that the doula can actually help with outcomes,
Yeah.
seems like a no-brainer to me.
Right. And, going back to the healthcare deserts that are out there, it's so important to have somebody that they can rely on. Again, we've talked about this numerous times, driving hundreds of miles to get to a hospital when you could actually deliver in, closer to home or at
Yeah,
home.
yeah, yeah. Um,
Crazy
you
case.
also
Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was gonna say your second question, I wanna make sure I'm being complete, is how might she have felt or how might someone feel when that choice is taken away? I would imagine for her in particular, because she knew what it could be like, was probably pretty livid and was probably really confused to see that iPad come in and be like, wait, what? I'm giving birth. This is a
Okay.
vulnerable place. I'm being coerced into something. And I know about reproductive coercion because I'm a doula. So, and I have to imagine that she and her OB had discussed
Yeah,
this beforehand. So that her plan was, hey, I want to try for,
the VBAC. Yeah.
um, yeah,
And no, I mean, I don't know any other than if patients don't get prenatal care or they're traveling or something like that. I don't know too many patients for whom that's a problem.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I know there's some offices that they don't feel comfortable. And so they just say,
For
we don't do that here.
at the end of the day, it's gonna be pretty rare that a laboring patient in the hospital with an established OBGYN is not going to have made a plan for a VBAC.
Yeah.
And I recall, attending to VBACs in my time as a labor and delivery nurse. And there was a doctor would come in, the nurse would be there. We would all sit and work through the informed consent of a VBAC. You can't even come in and be admitted to the hospital with a plan to do a VBAC without what that's going to look like. And my other question beyond was this documented in her OB visits, which I would have to imagine it is. I would love to see the heart rate strip, the electronal fetal monitoring, sorry, EFM. It's been a minute. I would love to look at that baby's heart rate
Hmm.
because it's one thing, like, I don't believe in coercion pretty much ever. I mean, I've never had a patient be like, "Oh yeah, my baby's heart rate's plummeting. He's about to die, but I'm not gonna have a C-section." Like,
Right.
I've
Most of the time, people are like, get me to the OR.
right, but
Yeah.
so
Save
what
my
was
baby.
it didn't seem like there was any distress involved. That's where you would go, "Okay, Miss Doyle, you plan to do," I hope I'm saying her last name right. "Your plan to do a VBAC is no longer safe. Your baby's fetal heart tones are down into the 60s. Here's why that's not sustainable," right? And then if she was still refusing, okay, maybe you bring in, like, the hospital ethics team or something to try to help make sure she fully understands what she is doing, but it doesn't seem like any of that was at play in this story, right? Did I miss
Mhm.
that somewhere? Because I didn't see it.
I don't recall reading anything about that. I know that they didn't actually, in the recording that people have seen, again, not everything is public, right? But they didn't talk about the risks of the actual surgery. They didn't discuss that from what I had read in the article that I read about it. They didn't discuss all of the risks involved in doing that. So,
In the C-section part?
What? So they coerced her into an emergency C-section where they didn't talk to her about the potential
well, no,
downsides of this?
in the courtroom, I guess. I'm gonna put a courtroom because, she was in the bed, with the
Right.
IVs and everything like that. But apparently the doctors did say that, oh, the heart rate went down a couple of times overnight and, that's when they rushed her in. I don't think that it went like the judge said, okay, you're having a C-section. I think they did wait a little bit, but still, it's something that, again, I think, Elizabeth, to your point, is that what was going on? And I don't
We
think
need
that
more information.
yeah, and I don't think she's the type of person that would be like, "Oh, the heart rate is, going down. I'm still gonna hold off a little bit
Right.
longer." Like, that doesn't sound like something.
And I thought I had read something as an account from her account that said that those decelerations, which, by the way, like, again, show me the
They
strip.
happen.
They're
Yeah.
normal. He's like, as
Yeah.
Mhm.
long as the heart rate is reactive, that's what you want. If you lost reactivity, so meaning as opposed to going up to the 150s and then back to the 120s and then 160s and back to the 120, that's normal. It's when a baby's heart rates are staying the same and then
Mhm.
slowly declining that indicates to you that the baby has lost his or her oxygen reserves or and they're decompensating. And it just didn't seem like I don't know. Again, it sounded like from the patient's account, it was there weren't. And now she hadn't been having contractions for 12 hours. So again, was she not dilating? Like, we don't know any of those things. So
Right.
I hate to condemn the staff or the team, right? In some ways, because we don't yet know all the details. My guess is people will need to be condemned. Let's just wait till we get all the details. We should probably move on though, because we have like a million crazy stories in the news. But Charisse, We are pulling for you. We are doing everything we can to get your story out. And I'm glad that light is shining on this because this is insane.
Yeah. So one of the other things that I read this week, and I think see it trending more and more, is the fact, and I think it's just misinformation going out there. So I found a post on LinkedIn about how birth control pills were now listed as a group 1 cancer causing agent per the World Health Organization. So this person posted repost for awareness, like this just happened. This did not just happen. The some birth control pills have been listed on the World Health Organization as potentially cancer causing agents since 2005. Sorry, I was going to say 2025. No, since 2005. So it's not new information. What I think is going on, and I'm going to go off on a little opinion page here, is that people are trying to make birth control pills bad so that people won't take them so that they will, get pregnant. And there's all these laws about abortion now, right? Abortion bans. So now we're going to have all these people getting pregnant. And so I think that they're trying to capture younger women who are out thinking about taking birth control pills or who are on birth control pills and making it out to be this really horrible thing, because we know it is not a really horrible thing. It's not for everybody. And Elizabeth and I have talked about birth control in the past. There are certain people that cannot take the pills. They have to find a different form. But I think that this messaging, first off, it's a blanket statement. It's wrong because it didn't just happen, and it's all over TikTok now. And all these, messages coming out, and seeing all these young women deciding, then I'm just not going to do birth control. I don't want to have cancer, or I don't want to do this. And I think that it's misinformation that's getting out there. I think it's messing with a lot of young women, particularly young women's mental health, um, as far as like being able to control when they have a family.
Would be another form of reproductive coercion, this time, though, at the hands of the federal government. So, if birth control is not available, first of all, that impacts IVF. So, birth control is the first step in any kind of IVF retrieval cycle. It's important. The idea is to kind of level the playing field so that they can have a controlled cycle, that the doctors can control it rather than whatever the ups and downs of a cycle might be for an individual person. It also means that we're taking away choices for people, and we're now putting them in a much smaller box. It took women a very long time in order to get out of that box, to
So
demand voting ability, to demand, I mean, look, this wasn't even that long ago. It used to be that your husband had to sign if you wanted a credit card. Oh my goodness. So
That
all of
was the
these,
year I was born that ended.
yeah,
So
as I said, it
that's
wasn't that
crazy.
long ago. We're not talking about ancient history. I know,
Well,
like,
sometimes I
voting rights
feel like
might feel that
ancient
way.
history. Yeah,
well, since
sometimes I
you
feel
started
ancient.
talking about that, can we just shift and tangent a moment on this, like the state of affairs currently right now in our country that have us at a war of choice and a shutdown that is never going to end unless we pass the SAVE Act. So now the
Oh,
White
wait.
House is holding hostage the DHS shutdown and saying, let's pass this and then it's all good. It's all good. Right. I mean,
And there's been,
and that act, I mean, it completely and utterly is in there to roll us back to the time that you just mentioned, Julie.
but what's interesting about it is the methods they're using to roll us back tend to impact people that identify as Republicans much more so at such a greater rate than people who might identify as independent or Democrats. So it's interesting to me. And I think that's why there's pushback about it, is because some legislators are like, why are we shooting ourselves in the foot?
Exactly. Interesting. Very interesting, especially campaigning and talking to so many people to hear
Sure.
our, more elderly community members just sort of put their head in their hand, like, I can't believe we're here again. Um, that part is hard. But back to well, we talked a little bit about the fetal death certificate bill in Ohio. Anne-Marie, did that move? Did that has that moved forward or has it been signed?
I don't think it has been signed.
Okay.
I believe it's just been introduced
Okay.
from what I understand. So that's pretty crazy in case you don't know. But in Ohio, they wanted to have a required you would have to you would be required to file a certificate of life after the detection of a fetal heartbeat. And with that, a registration of all fetal deaths. So another certificate of death. So
Okay.
that
It's
I
yeah.
did not hear. Is this whole register the heartbeat thing? Is that new? Because when we talked about this on the show last week, we just knew about the fetal death certificate part, which we talked about that being like a real problem because it is a fetal personhood statute. But I didn't hear this part about registering the heartbeat.
Yes. So
My
under the legislation, a
professional.
medical professional who determines the presence of a fetal heartbeat would have to file a certificate of life in a local records office within 10 days of the examination.
Again, I'm like dumbfounded by this because, as you all have talked about in past episodes, because I listen, so I know, that 6 week check is fetal tones. It's not
heart.
heartbeat, it's tones. It is, this could be the building blocks of where a circulatory system can be grown from, but
That's
it's not a,
It's not actually a heart that is beating. What we document it as fetal cardiac activity. There's a flicker that is happening where blood flow starts to flow, and that flickering, that fetal cardiac activity is the measure that we use to say that there is in fact a pregnancy, intrauterine pregnancy. Why do you
So,
think Oh, sorry. I was
no,
just
I
gonna
was
ask
just
you
gonna
guys like a weird
just going
rhetorical
back to
question.
what you said, Julie, was it is tracking pregnancy.
Mhm.
It's very plain and simple of what is trying to happen here, right? They want to track anybody who's pregnant because they want to track, let's get to it, abortion, right?
Yeah.
And
But here's the problem with it. So even people who consider themselves to be pro-birth or pro-life, they might look at this and be like, well, this is great. There's nothing to hide. Except, how do you prove miscarriage? How do you prove stillbirth?
And how do you
You
prove that
can't.
you were not responsible for it? You know
yeah,
how
Correct.
we've been spinning the narrative about Tylenol? Do you think it's gonna be all that difficult for the powers to be like, "Yeah, you caused that?" And
Right.
does that look like, tox screenings on moms who miscarry to see if it was their fault? Like, this is like bananas territory. For those of you who actually watch, roll back like a minute and a half and watch my face when I heard registration of life thing because I'm still completely mind blown by this. I mean, truly and completely. And what I was going to add is I don't understand why we are so obsessed with fetuses when
Hmm.
we're bombing children's schools around the world.
Yep.
You are not pro life at all. You are pro birth, period. Because that is exactly what this is. Let's track it because if I can have a certificate that says you are pregnant at 10 weeks and 30 weeks later you don't have a baby, what? Do you get a warrant out for your arrest?
hmm
Yeah. Well, some women, yes, in fact. And we're seeing that in other states. So
yeah,
women that are
and
getting, go ahead.
yeah, there's a woman right now being charged with murder in the state of
Yep.
Georgia, right?
Yep.
Because the police say she took pills to induce an abortion, and she was estimated somewhere between 22 and 24 weeks. Georgia has
Sick.
6 week. Is it there's a 6 week? Okay, 6 week ban. So yeah, she's being charged with murder.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, I think it's important to just generalize this around reproductive health and what that is. Like, people are scared to live in certain states who want to build a family because it feels too risky to do this really normal human thing when they can't guarantee that they will be treated with dignity. And so, there are people that might look at this differently, but this is going to impact miscarriage and stillbirth. And I wonder about neonatal death too. So this, what we think is just targeting abortion, I can promise you will be applied far more broadly.
It always is. It always is.
Hmm.
And I'm sure that there's a chapter of Project 2025 all about this. because we've got dozens of airports. I think dozens now, maybe at least a dozens of airports across the country that ICE now works at. Like,
When did they get trained?
I guess on the plane. But if you roll back 1 year ago, Senator Lee, no relation, by the way, introduced a bill to abolish TSA and privatize it. And now we have, I know I'm going on a slight tangent, but we have paying ICE officers to do TSA's job, but TSA is, they're doing the job.
Getting paid.
Why can't we just use the money that we're using to pay ICE and pay TSA instead? But it's just,
Well,
it's
that's been something that's been proposed to try to get out of the stalemate.
exactly. But that, just like this, the whole crackdown on contraceptives, the crackdown on miscarriages, the pregnancy tracking, all of this stuff was well spelled out. It really is. So like you said, I forget which one of you said it, like if you think that that's not where this is going, you are dead wrong. This is literally just the beginning.
Right. The other thing that came out recently is that, and I want to say it was last week perhaps, but there are some states that actually mandate health insurance coverage for abortion. And now the administration is trying to get that repealed, right? But here's the thing.
Wait a second. If abortion is a state issue,
Thank you. Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I was going with that, Julie. You read my mind. Exactly. They took it out from the federal and they gave it back to the states, which is what a lot of people wanted. They wanted it to go back to the states. Here it is back in the states, but here's the federal government coming in and swooping in and trying to control everything. So,
can't have it both ways.
no, absolutely. So that got my got to be in my bonnet for that one. I was all in a tussle reading that because I was like, you clearly said we want the states to make these decisions. You did it. And now you're just trying to poke your fingers back in. No, you can't have it both ways. Exactly. Thank you. Preach. Okay. So, a couple other things that I've been seeing. Another thing I see a lot in the news and a lot of different articles from coming out of different states. What I kind of want to talk about is the crisis pregnancy centers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
Oh, yeah.
Julie,
yeah,
I feel like, let's just hand the mic over to you right now. I feel like
yeah,
you're,
yeah.
just take
Ready?
a breath and
Go.
get ready, folks, because it's about to drop some truth on you.
So, what is considered to be a crisis pregnancy center sounds really innocuous by the name. In fact, it sounds like this could be a really useful, beneficial thing for people.
Yes.
And potentially it could, except that typically the people that work there aren't actual medically licensed. They will do an ultrasound. They keep you waiting. So you're trapped in there. And oftentimes they have their locations near an abortion clinic to purposefully confuse people. And they have them have similar names to like healthy choices or something like that, that again, innocuous, but not really about your choice. It's about their choice. Yeah, I know women that have just been like trapped there and they're like, get me out. They do persuade some women. And when those people are like, actually, no, that's not going to work for me. I do need an abortion. They might have timed out of it. So that's another tactic too, is, hey, can we time out of it? Another thing that they like to do is they have some really interesting ultrasounds where you can see a 7-week continuing to divide and to grow pregnancy, and they will claim that you're 11 weeks, where it's a really different picture. And sometimes what I find super duper fun is the misrepresentations of what a baby looks like growing in the womb. So it gets personified as a baby that we know, that we can look at and hold, and kind of our general a general recognition of what a baby looks like. But they're using that to describe an 8-week pregnancy. That is incorrect. It's just factually incorrect. So by purposefully sharing misinformation or just lying outright, they are causing a lot of harm. They're causing fear. They're causing what is already potentially a hard decision, but might not be. They're adding drama to it that did not need it. And they're really preventing people from enacting their own reproductive autonomy.
And also,
Or,
Because they are not medical providers, they are not subjected to HIPAA laws.
right.
So your personal information can be shared because they are not under HIPAA law.
And not only can it be shared, it is shared.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's not a hypothetical there. And so then people who have gone there, like, they will get harassed after the fact.
Mhm.
Oh, how's the baby? And they will say to you, oh, we will supply, we get so many donations for diapers and strollers. We will take care of you once the baby comes. Nope,
Yeah.
they don't.
There was one article I read where this one couple went in and they had to continuously come back to be seen to earn like bucks. I put that in quotes again. They get these baby bucks and then
Like vouchers.
which they can use to get baby wipes and diapers and things like that. Yeah, I know. I don't know.
Can't hide my face today, apparently. That is
Yeah, no.
No, I never hide my face. So,
no, it is really, it's overwhelming to think how far some folks will go to ensure their vision, their ideal is everyone's reality. And I do and I don't. Like, I do understand the obsession with it, with birth, because more people, more labor, more billionaires. But I
and
just
C-sections, right? Because more deliveries, you can get in more deliveries,
yep,
therefore more
yep.
money for the hospitals, et
Yep,
cetera.
exactly. The whole thing just reeks of, yeah, I guess you need to talk about end stage capitalism, but it's almost like this feels like end stage American healthcare system in a way. We're just
Yeah.
at this burn rate that nobody can afford, and people are skipping meals to go to the doctor, and you know,
Or just not going.
or just
Mhm.
not going. And then you've got, with this immigration crackdown, we've got a lot of patients sheltering in place here. They won't go to their OB visits.
They
They
can't.
rely on an underground, network of good Samaritans and mutual aid to make sure that they have groceries and they have diapers and they have the things that they need. If we actually cared about people, this would never even be a conversation.
Yeah. Well, if we cared about children, then we wouldn't be cutting funding to WIC. If we cared about children, then we wouldn't be making it so much harder to qualify and stay on Medicaid. Like, this is not about children.
It's really not.
Mhm.
It's really not. Well, let's talk about some good news. Was there any good news in the week? Was there anything good in the news this week? Because it was a tough news week otherwise.
No.
I found, well, hold on a second. I have found a Instagram account that I really like because what they do is they will post good news only. And so it talks about advances in medicine and science and technology. It's global. It's not, they one of the things that I read recently was there's an endangered species that's no longer considered endangered. That's good news. That's awesome.
That is great.
So it's these kinds of things. So there are places. I mean, there's the Good News Channel. I think in the pandemic, that was something that came. And these kinds of places are really important. It's also really important. And sorry, now I'm getting on one of my many hills to die on. When we think about taking care of ourselves or self care, we tend to think about it in like the most extreme kind of way. Self care is waking up in the morning and noticing a beautiful sunrise. Self care is being able to look around and notice the daffodils are starting to bloom. Self care is about being around your friends and laughing with them. Self care might just be going on a walk. So, all of those things are free. Um, all of those things can take minimal effort, and we're not doing it for ourselves because we are so locked in on our screens.
Mhm.
And that I can tell you help no one.
Mhm. Yeah. So, Julie, is that what you recommend to like when you're talking to your patients, like kind of step away, kind of get away from
Yeah.
the noise?
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much noise, and you really do need to seek out the good because
Mhm.
it is not breaking through
Right.
all of this noise.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think algorithms, deliberately kind of lead you down these little rabbit holes. And
Yeah.
even though I try to set up my Instagram to be all happy news and fun things and fun facts and things like that, I just can't get away. And so now I'm just trying to like avoid it as much as I can.
Yeah.
Julie, I have
Yeah.
an interesting question for you actually, because I read somewhere the other day that political depression, no, political anxiety, I think they called
Hmm.
it. One or the other.
Hmm.
Political anxiety is now a real thing. I want to say the statistic was something like 70% of patients talk to their therapist about politics and its
Yep.
effect on them. Talk to us a little bit
Yep.
about that because I would be so curious to your perspective.
So because of where I'm situated, I'm in the suburbs of Washington D.C. So politics has always been something that is permeates my community because so many people work for directly the federal government or are contractors or rely on the federal government to sustain their businesses. So it's mixed into my community in so many different ways. So I mean, I've been hearing about political fear far longer than I think what's coming up now. And I think what's coming up now for people is they're feeling it. It is touching them in a way that they hadn't been touched by politics before.
Yeah.
And so they're starting to look at it and try to understand it. And it's frustrating and confusing. And it's really easy to throw your hands up and say, well, they're all awful.
Mhm.
But I like to find hope in campaigns like Elizabeth's, where she's this fabulous person and would want to be a change maker. You know, I look at some of the other people in other states that are running, and it's like, that's actually really exciting because these are people who want to make change.
Yeah.
And the change is possible. It really is.
Yes.
We have really been misled for a very long time in this country that this is just how it has to be.
No.
But I am currently working with a group of 130 now, I think it is, congressional candidates from across the country. And we meet every week, we talk, we plan, we brainstorm. And our number one goal on day one is accountability to hold the president accountable for impeachable offenses. And we are the impeachment and group because then we can look amongst us where do we have the political firepower? If we take the House back, where do we have the political firepower to pass on day one? What about day two, right? Start with the lowest hanging fruit. It's a whole group of people who say, you know what? We're tired of paying Congress people $160,000 a year, whatever it is, to go off and do nothing.
Mhm.
Last three Congresses have been the least effective Congresses in the history of the United States, and people are freaking tired of it. And so, myself and 130 some other candidates are out here for you fighting. We are called courage candidates for a reason because it does take courage to speak truth to power, but we are here, we are fighting because we believe that it can be done
And
with
these are
because this is a political choice. These are political choices. So if we come together and we elect the right people who will make political choices that are actually in the people's favor, man, the future we could have would be incredible.
so I think like one of the big choices too is let's get big money out of politics.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes.
Citizens United was just the worst decision with so many awful kinds of
Yes.
consequences.
Yes.
But let's also like we shouldn't have senators whose net worth when they come into the Senate is one thing and then it quadruples
That's right.
that next election because what is likely insider trading get to know things that the rest of us don't know. And so they can make decisions about stocks or other things that they might own before the rest of us know that
Right,
things.
right.
Yeah.
And just
I
in general,
mean,
that's a complete conflict to quote public service.
correct.
That is private service. That is billionaire service. That is Epstein class service.
Yeah. And just, we want every I want everyday people, being representing me. I want somebody who's kind of understands what's going on the ground, not somebody who's had a privileged life or who has all this money and can pay for signs and all of that. So, I want somebody who's down to earth. I want somebody who understands the topics. And also, people who are making some of the decisions up there, well, excuse me, all of the people in Congress, they all get full healthcare benefits,
That's right.
including IVF, right? They all
Hmm.
have that. They do
Yep.
not have to worry about any of that. Yet they're making laws about other people and taking that, some of those choices away from people. So that is
Yeah.
just like,
And so I
we need.
refuse to believe, we got on the ballot, I think 8 months ago, a lot of people thought that would never happen.
Mhm.
But
Showed them.
Yeah, I'm just out here believing that maybe that also a lie we've been told is that you can't run a congressional campaign if you don't have $3 million. Right?
Correct.
Because where does all the big money go? It usually goes to ads, and if you're running ads, that might probably means you're not knocking on doors, and I'm not to say that ads aren't important, but I just really am challenging the status quo that, you have to raise X amount of dollars because people told me I had to raise $100,000 by December 31st or I would be out of the race. That didn't happen. Who was gonna kick me out? That's just old school establishment thinking that's like, "Oh, yeah, just take big PAC checks and you'll be fine."
Yeah, I
It's
know.
not correct anymore.
I remember asking Elizabeth, I was like, "Does this mean you're out? I don't
She
know."
did. I know, because I told her she asked me, like, I think it was, like, New Year's Eve, like, or New Year's Day, like, "Did it happen?" And I said, "No," and she goes, "Oh my gosh, like, what does that mean?" And I was like, "Basically nothing," you know? I heard it when they told me that, I thought, "Okay, that's the thing, you have to have that," but I think a lot of the way things are today is because there's been so much look at how many members of Congress have been there for our whole adult lives.
Yeah.
So long, so long,
Yep.
Like,
past their
think
prime.
about the people that have been in the political machine of names our whole life. It's been the same crusty crew of extreme, primarily old white dudes. Um, like, folks are over it. Like, Anne Marie, remember when we sat in the gallery looking down on the vote? Julie, were you there for that vote?
I wasn't there for that vote, but I got to go on the gallery the time
The
you weren't
next
able
time.
to
Yeah, yeah.
come.
So
Yeah.
Andrea and I were sitting there for the right to IVF vote that was introduced by Senator Duckworth and Senator Murray and Senator Booker, and looking down, and all of a sudden, Lindsey Graham, I think it was Lindsey Graham, walks in, and then suddenly there's like this little over to the corner of him and McConnell and a number of other people, whispering how they were gonna vote because, they're the ones controlling it. Those guys gotta go. We gotta
Mhm.
get rid of all these folks that claim there's nothing we can do when there is. It's
Right.
not fair. There's stuff you can do.
Yeah. They just don't have the courage to do it because all of this, to the point, takes courage. It takes courage to see institutions that are broken and to fix them, not just put them back together. And I think, one thing that I really feel like is an opportunity if we can get our acts together is that so much is broken, which means it can be fixed in a different way. We don't have to restore it back. We don't have to conserve what it was, but
Mhm.
we can look to the future and say, okay, so we know how this system didn't serve everyone. How
Mhm.
do we make it more equitable?
That's right. Thank you for saying that. I really appreciate that you threw that in there because we are, we are not trying to go back to something. We're trying to go forward to something that's will be in all of our interests instead of
Yeah,
just some of our interests.
correct. Well,
But
That's
until next
awesome.
week, Dr. Binneman has to go see patients. We got to go
yeah.
change lives. We appreciate you all so very much, and we'll see you or talk to you.
Bye.